Hello, my name is Alexander Open Yoga. I am an English language teacher. Also, I am a yoga instructor. I teach language using the methods of yoga. And today I would like to tell you a little bit about what the theory of Sphota is. And today I will read a book entitled The Sphota Theory of Language, a philosophical analysis. I think this is a very interesting book, and I think that everyone who is interested in the theory of language should know about the Sphota, about the theory of Sphota, which was propounded by an ancient rishi, by an ancient sage, whose name was Bhartrihari. And now we will read a book, The Sphota Theory of Language. The Sphota Theory of Language, a philosophical analysis by Härольd Kovard. And now we will start reading this book. Forward. We live, move, and have our being in language, even to criticize its faults and limitations. To the extent of negating it, we have to use language. Language is not an accidental accretion to thought, but its very essence. As Bhartrihari says, there is no cognition without the operation of words. All cognition is shot through and through by the word. All knowledge is illumined through the word. Shabdena bhasate. Na sosti pratyaya lokiyach shabdanugamatrite. Anuvidham iva gyanam sarvam shabdena bhasate. Vakyapadya 1:115. Dr. Kovard quotes the opening verses from St. John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This brings out its universality and fundamental basis of all life and thought, its divinity. When a speaker makes use of identical and repeatable words, say sounds, to convey some meaning, something not present on the scene, and when this is understood by the hearer, language functions. In this sense, even animals, dogs, horses, and elephants, for instance, understand and obey commands, and one talks to them. Indian speculations on language began with the Veda and have continued till recently without any break. In the Rig Veda, several hymns are devoted to Vak, speech, and the same spiritual trends are continued in the Brahmanas and the Upanishads. Patanjali in the Mahabhashya quotes some of these striking utterances and comments on them. It can truly be said that the philosophy of language, as cultivated by the school of grammar and the Mimamsa, is the elaboration of the suggestions found in the Veda. The divine nature of speech, rather, its being the great God himself, the creative and illuminative power of the word, and the different levels of speech, these doctrines, which form the main plank of the philosophy of language in Indian thought, all stem from the Veda. The ancillary disciplines of the Veda, phonetics, shiksha, grammar, vyakarana, language analysis, and nirukta, definitions of terms, were directly connected with the Veda. The Mimamsa is basically a systematic exegesis of Vedic texts. On this arena of language, the different philosophical systems met and clashed. It is no exaggeration to say that Indian philosophy is repeated twice over, once in the accredited metaphysical systems as we know them, and once again in their standpoint with regard to language. Almost all types of metaphysics, absolutism, and pluralism, empiricism and transcendentalism, realism and nominalism and their shades and subshades are found here. Every system of philosophy had to consider language at some stage or other, and each one had to ponder over ultimate questions concerning the relation of the word to reality, of the modes of meaning and the validity of verbal knowledge. Shabda Pramana. Their metaphysical bias determined their answers to these questions. It should be an interesting and almost an engrossing study to view and expound Indian philosophy from this angle. If the Greeks built their science and philosophy and culture on mathematics, especially geometry, the Indians built theirs on language, Shabda Shastra. It is the exemplar of all disciplined investigations. Two principal schools, the Mimamsa and philosophy of grammar, made massive and most significant contributions to the philosophy of language, with Nyaya playing an important role on the empirical level. The Alankarikas, rhetoricians, also made very acute analysis of linguistic and literary meaning. We may reinterpret Indian philosophy as stemming from two principal traditions based on their different evaluations of language. The Brahmanical tradition stemming from the Veda takes language as of divine origin, Daivivak, as spirit descending and embodying itself in phenomena, assuming various guises and disclosing its real nature to the sensitive soul. The well-known Rigveda verse Chatvari Shringa Trayosya Pada Dveshirshe Sapta Hastasasya Tridhabadho Rishabho Roraviti Mahadevo Martyam Avivesha. Rigveda 4:58-3 expresses this truth in poetic form. It symbolizes speech as the bellowing bull of abundant fecundity, as the great God descending into the world of mortals. Patanjali asks, "Who is this great God?" and answers, "Speech itself." Mahan Devah Shabdaha. Another verse of the Rigveda, quoted by Kovard, tells us that the ignorant man seeing and hearing speech in its overt manifest forms does not know its real nature. To the wise, speech reveals her intrinsic nature even as the loving wife does to her husband. The Vedanta, Mimamsa, the Sankhya Yoga, and the school of grammar and Kashmir Shaivism, among several others, are loyal to this tradition. In opposition to this high evaluation of language, we have the naturalistic conception of language as an arbitrary and conventional tool. This stand denied the validity of verbal testimony as a valid source of knowledge. It was nominalistic, positivistic, and skeptical in this regard. The Charvaka and schools of Buddhism, including the Madhyamika, are representatives of this tradition. Empiricists, as they are, the Jaina and the Nyaya Vaisheshika, occupy a somewhat intermediary position. Dr. Kovard, in his book, makes pointed reference to this twofold tradition and adequately analyzes their stand. That language is underived and the word is a form and is thus distinct from its material embodiment, sound, dhvani, are established by the theory of the eternality of the word, Shabda Nityatvavada, both by the Mimamsa and the grammar school. Words and their relation with meaning are eternal and underived and impersonal. It may be thought that we give names to persons and things and thus initiate new conventions, and that the same logic should be applied to the other words also. Common words. They too were the result of convention, sanketa, and where human convention is not available, recourse may be had to divine convention. Against this view, the Mimamsa argues rightly that the relation between the word and the meaning is not an arbitrary convention established by man or even by God, either now or in the past. We do not have record of any such convention. Convention itself presupposes language, which is sought to be derived from convention. To make convention, words have to be used and understood by persons participating in the convention. This is clearly circular. Invoking God does not help here. How could God make known His intentions, His conventions between particular words and their specific meanings to persons who did not use language already? There would be a communication gap. And if men were already using language, God's convention does not obviously initiate language as claimed. However, far back we might push the beginning of convention. We would still find language use preceding it. An absolute beginning of language is untenable. Linguistic usage is continuous. What constitutes the unit of language? Does each letter of a word or each word in a sentence have a separate meaning by itself, or do they have meaning as combined together? Obviously not the first alternative, for each letter of any particular word does not convey either a part of the whole meaning, nor the second, for combination of syllables which makes up the word or the several words which make up the sentence are not present in consciousness as one whole. Notoriously, the syllables of a word nor the several words which are supposed to constitute a sentence are never together. They die out as they are pronounced. And when we arrive at the last letter of a word or the last word of a sentence, the previous elements have already dropped out. How, then, is a combination possible? It may be pointed out, as is done by the Mimamsaka and the Nyaya philosophers, that we have the last word, or rather the last phoneme, letter Antimavarna, actually present in our ken, and this actual perceptual state, combined with the memory smarana of the other letters and words, or their traces, samskaras, engenders the meaning as a whole. But order or sequence of letters and words should also be taken into account. Otherwise, the words lamp and palm would have the same meaning. But what would determine the order of words in the absence of an awareness of the whole? It must be pointed out here that on the Mimamsa or Nyaya hypothesis, a whole word or a whole sentence can never be present in our consciousness. Again, as the meaning is a whole, a unit, and is understood as a whole or one unit, the verbal condition which engenders the one meaning must likewise be a whole. The grammar school is led from such considerations to advance the doctrine of Sphota. The unitary whole word, particularly the akhanda vakyartha Sphota, that the sentence is an indivisible unit whole, and this engenders meaning. The separate letters or the words serve merely to manifest abhivyanjana, bring the akhanda vakya Sphota into play. That is, the several sounds of letters and words, the dhvani, uttered by the speaker and heard by the hearer serve merely the purpose of arousing or invoking the Sphota, whole sentence unit, already present in each one of us. Verbal communication is made possible because of the identical and eternal Sphota, equally and fully present in both the speaker and the hearer in every one of us. The physical and physiological sounds uttered in a sentence and heard at the other end by the hearer only serve to manifest the eternal word already present. It may be rebutted, as is done by the Mimamsa in Nyaya, that the manifestation or invoking of the spkhota does not escape the objections raised against the theory of individual letters or separate words generating meaning. Is the spkhota manifested by a few letters or by all the letters taken together, and in what order? In any case, the letters or the words of a sentence are indispensable, although the grammarian belittles their function and thinks little of them. In addition, the grammar school makes a gratuitous assumption of a mythical and superfluous entity like the spkhota. This criticism misses the deeper significance of the spkhota conception. In linguistic apprehension, as in other cognitions, there is the interplay of two factors of two different levels: the empirical manifold of sense data, the separate letters or words uttered by the speaker and heard by the hearer, the overt sounds or words in common parlance, and the transcendental or a priori synthesis of the manifold by the category of the whole unit word, which alone imparts unity and singleness of purpose to those empirical elements which would otherwise have remained a mere manifold, unorganized without unity. The spkhota is the real sentence or word unit which operates behind the facade of the overtly sensuous syllables and words. Against the empiricism of the Mimamsa and the Nyaya, the grammar school is a form of transcendentalism. Epistemologically, it is a two-level theory as applied to linguistic cognition. The Advaita Vedanta also states that in all cognition, Brahman, or the self-luminous consciousness, Svaprakasha Chaitanya, is identically present and is made manifest. When we are perceiving the pot or the table, the Vedanta holds that we are really perceiving Brahman, the unitary whole, undivided consciousness, as seemingly delimited by the pot or the table, which are floating and adventitious adjectives of the universal substantive Brahman. The Vedanta is also committed to a two-level theory on the epistemic plane. These two factors, spkhota and the empirical sounds which manifest it, belong to two different orders. One is empirical and the other is submerged and hidden, and has therefore to be excited and manifested by the overt sounds. Nada abhivyangya spkhotah, but is really the basis or reality of the empirical. The battle royal is between the grammar school on the one hand and the Mimamsa as represented by Kumarilabhatta principally, and the Nyaya as represented by Vachaspati Mishra, Jayantabhatta and others. The arguments and counter-arguments put forth by both sides are explained and presented with great skill, clarity and understanding by Dr. Kovard. Mandana Mishra in his Sphota Siddhi states the grammarian's position and refutes with rigor and cogency the Mimamsa arguments. The sustained argumentations and level of sophistication exhibited evoke one's wonder. This constitutes one of the very brilliant portions of the Sphota Theory of Language, Chapter 6. We have seen that the grammar school, like the Advaita Vedanta, is committed to levels of language and is based on an absolutism. As Dr. Kovard puts it, if one develops the Sphota position purely in terms of logical consistency, a monistic hierarchy such as the following necessarily results, just as the phonemes are only unreal abstractions of the word, so also words are unreal abstractions of the sentence, and the sentence is unreal abstractions of the paragraph. Even the paragraph is not the ultimate unity, since it is only an unreal division of the chapter of the book. At the top of this language hierarchy, perhaps there is only one indivisible reality within our literary self, which, due to our human ignorance or limitation or avidya, can only manifest itself in such unreal forms as the book, the chapter, the paragraph, the sentence, and the word. The underlying principle, maintains Bhartrihari, is that all difference presupposes unity, abheda purvako bhibhedaha. Where there is difference or parts, there must be an underlying identity. Otherwise, the one could not be related to the other, and each would constitute a world by itself. This is the grounding for Bhartrihari's metaphysical speculation, our manifestation of one central, eternal, and indivisible principle, Shabda Brahman or Paravak, having the pranava as its mystic unitary utterance. For the grammar school, the divisions of words and letters is convenient fiction made for pedagogical purposes to teach words with precision and great economy of effort. As Bhartrihari says, Shastraich, Prakriyabhedaich, Avidyeva Pavarnyate, meaning that the various technical procedures adopted in the treatises teach only forms of false appearances, avidya eva upavarnyate. For instance, take the word bhavati, third-person singular form of present tense of the verb rud bhu, satyayam, is derived by Panini by taking bhu as the verb root to be, to become, to be present, etc., and adding the suffix ti, pa, along with an intermediary a, shap, and changing the root bhu into bho, etc. Instead, we can say the verb root is bhava and the suffix is ti. But how then are we to account for the past participle of bhu, which is bhuta, bhutavan, and other noun forms as bhuti, etc.? We can say that in such cases bhava gets a vowel change, samprasarana, etc. All this is to show that there is nothing sacrosanct about the Paninian techniques and processes. The only criterion is that with how fewer steps and processes we could acquire the greatest amount of words, the law of parsimony and economy of effort. The basic division of sentences into words and words into bases, nouns, and verb roots with their respective suffixes, prakriti, pratyaya, vibhaga, on which the whole science of grammar is based, is itself phenomenal, not real. It is a convenient fiction to manipulate and handle words with precision and ease. As the grammarians say that they, in all simplicity and exuberance, began with the investigation of words, how to manipulate and acquire them, they began with the systematic study of overt speech. Lo, they stumbled upon the word absolute, Shabda Brahman, like a person engaged upon picking up straw and little faggot stumbling upon a big diamond. The divisions of the levels of speech into Vaikhari, overt speech, usage of sounds, Madhyama, internal speech, or Antarjalpa, where there is the order or sequence of words and meanings, and this is preceded logically by a more unitary stage where there is no other or sequence of words, but just a glimpse of the separation of word and meaning, the stage of intentionality, or the primordial urge to express oneself. This stage is called Pashyanti, the onward or forward-looking phase. As in this stage there is the distinction between word and meaning, Shabda and Artha, it presupposes a unitary ground on which this distinction is superimposed. As we have seen, Bhartrihari subscribes to the principle that wherever there are differences and distinctions, there is a basic unity underlying these differences, for otherwise these differences could not be related and will fall asunder. Each difference could become a radical monad. We cannot even assert that there are other monads, but this requires relation and unification which monadism utterly denies. So, Bhartrihari is logically led to the Paravak or Brahman, Shabda Brahman, as the ultimate reality from which the word has originated. He calls it Shabda Brahman because the approach to the highest is made here through the word Shabda or analysis of language, or because it is expressed through the words. Bhartrihari begins his great treatise, Vakyapadya, with keynote verse, the word, reality, Shabda Tattvam. Without beginning or end, the immutable word Aksharam appears vivartate as meaning and thing, artha bhavena. Thus happens the word process, prakriya jagatoyataha. This verse has to be construed in an absolutistic sense, as the whole trend and teaching of the Vakyapadya would show. The philosophical analysis of language is not just a logical exercise to satisfy intellectual curiosity, but an earnest and sustained spiritual approach to identify oneself with the basic ground of word phenomena with Shabda Brahman. Bhartrihari elaborates this approach as Shabda Yoga or Shabda Purvaka Yoga, and in this sense, grammar is a straight pathway to freedom. Mokshamananam ajihma rajyo padatihi. Dr. Kovard deals with this aspect of the Sphota philosophy of language. Dr. Kovard has accomplished his study of the Sphota theory of language with discerning scholarship, authenticity, and commendable philosophical acumen. He could see things from within, as by his sympathy he could identify himself with the attitude of the Sphota school. This has enabled him to appreciate the inherent strength and depth of the grammarian standpoint. Of course, the arguments and counter-arguments of the Sphota theory and its opponents do not lead to the absolute rejection or negation or any standpoint. No system of philosophy has refuted or knocked out other positions, in spite of the heroic words used by the disputants. The discussion and the dialectic serve to bring out the basic philosophical standpoints and clarifies their implicit differences. One may not accept a Sphota theory if he is not inclined metaphysically to do so, but one is bound to appreciate the basic principles underlying the Sphota theory and the spiritual intuition behind it. I have no manner of doubt that Dr. Kovard's book would prove of immense value and understanding with insight the Sphota theory and many other problems in the philosophy of language. Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, T.R.V. Murthy. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for listening to my reading of the book about the Sphota theory. I teach English using the methods of yoga. I teach English using the most advanced methods from the West. It is so-called the communicative approach in teaching English. Also, I use very ancient yoga methods, and these methods are based on the Sphota theory. So I invite you to my English classes by the methods of yoga. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this knowledge with your friends, and I hope I will see you next time. Bye.